Welcome to Hud's History. I'm Mr. Hudson. Today we're looking at China and imperialism in China. If you've seen my other videos, you've seen imperialism in Africa and also imperialism in India. But today we're looking at imperialism in China going from 1800 to 1910. A lot of different events that are going on in China during that time period. And you see China trying to stay isolated from the rest of the world other than to do some trade. But that's not going to end up being the best for them, only because other nations start to come in from Russia, which is basically just next to them, to the British, the French, the United States, even Japan, which we know Japan is very small, and islands, but it makes a very big impact coming over to China as well. As you can see on the map behind me, there's some different dates along with things that were going on. You do have things like the Taiping Rebellion that happened in 1850 to 1864. You also have the Boxer Rebellion, which I'm going to talk about. That happens in 1900. So a lot of things are going on in China. And let's talk about why these things were going on and what effects that imperialism had on China itself. So just to go back a couple hundred years, the 1700s, China's population had exploded. It was up to about 300 million people. And just to give you some context, the United States, as of 2020, has about 330 million people. So China's population was already bigger, basically, than what we are now. China, because it is larger, it had always been pretty much self-sufficient, stable. They had military to secure. They've gone through a lot of different dynasties that we know, going all the way back to the Han Dynasty, going through different things like the Ming Dynasty. You see this one, which is going to be the Qing Dynasty, which will be one of the last dynasties of China before you get to the Chinese Republic. And then, of course, you get into what is now the CCCP, which is the Chinese Communist Party. Because China had lived by traditions that were thousands of years old, they didn't really see the need to have a lot of relationships with the other countries. Trade was only so far as to allowing people to buy goods from China, that like they had done for hundreds of years, going all the way back to the Roman times. But that's going to change because you have a lot of technology changing. You have a lot more exploration that had been going on, and people are now traveling further, so they're able to get to places like China. Now, China earned a lot of money based off their exports alone. They had been exporting silk for forever and a day, but they also export other things like porcelain that had become very popular during the Ming Dynasty. Britain was very big on buying stuff from China. Europeans in general had bought a lot of goods from China because they really liked it. But Britain becomes a very big buyer of one specific thing from China, and that is tea. Britain imports a lot of tea from China. I mean, a lot, like millions of pounds worth of tea. And, they love their tea. So why not buy it? The Chinese are then going to receive silver from the British, and that becomes their relationship. The British buy the tea, the British give silver to the Chinese in exchange for the tea. Now, unfortunately, China is not going to be big on buying stuff from other groups. China only wants things that'll help keep it preserved. If it's not something they need or want, they're not going to buy it. Remember, if you go to the times of Zheng He and his trips along the Indian Ocean, they didn't really have a lot of connections and relationships with groups because they found that they didn't need a lot of things from these other places. Um, and here you see the same thing. The British really don't have anything that the Chinese want. And this is going to anger a lot of the merchants of Great Britain because they're spending thousands of pounds of British sterling and buying tea from China. And none of that money is coming back because you would assume that, okay, we're buying things from them and then they should buy things from us and the money will circulate back and forth. That's not what's going to happen. Because of that, and because China is very frugal in what they buy from other places, Britain is going to decide that they need to figure out what to do in order to regain some of that silver. So in 1835, Britain decides that they're going to use a specific product and they're going to take it into China and they're going to get people to buy it from them. What it is opium. It's a drug. Because they have their colonies in India and whatnot, they're able to gain poppies to create the opium, and then they're going to take it over into the different ports of China. They're going to smuggle it in, and unfortunately, the Chinese are going to start taking it, especially the common folk, and they are going to get addicted to it. The British will actually get 12 million Chinese people addicted to opium. 12 million people is a lot of money. This becomes very beneficial for the British. Why? Because now the silver that the British have been using to buy the tea from the Chinese is going to come back to them because of the opium. This is going to become what's known as the silver of cycle. And as you can see here on the map, you have the opium that's going to come from India, that's going to go over into China, and then the money from that is going to go back to Great Britain, and then Great Britain's going to, of course, use the money to buy tea. Now, you're probably thinking, "Wow, opium. Britain's a big drug smuggler." Yeah, they are. They're drug pushers. What can you say? 12 million people. You're going to get people addicted. Well, the Chinese aren't going to very much like that, right? Because that means that not only do they have a drug that is becoming very addictive and starting to get a fair amount of their citizens into buying this drug, but the money that the Chinese would normally keep are now going out to the British for this drug. The Chinese government does not like this. They become very mad, very angry at the British, and they're like, you know what? You got to leave. You got to get out of here. We don't want this anymore. And the British are like, no, we're going to keep bringing in opium into the harbors. Well, this leads to what's known as the first of the Opium Wars. The set of Opium Wars is when the Chinese try to blockade, try to destroy the British ships that are carrying the opium. However, remember that the Chinese do not have as big of a navy as the British. Why? Because the Chinese don't normally go out and do a lot of exploring on the waters anyway. But the British, they have, going all the way back to the 1500s, where they've gone through exploration. They've created this large military on the water, this huge navy that goes out. They're going to have all these colonies around the world: Australia, South Africa, India, Canada, right? So they have a lot of ships, and pretty much it's going to be this very large navy going against pretty much a non-existent navy of China. Who ends up winning this? Well, after a series of battles in the harbors, uh, there's going to be a treaty signed because the Chinese do not do very well. This is called the Treaty of Nanking, that's signed in 1842. They sign this after they lose. And it's not that they just lose a battle, they also lose territory. The treaty allowed the British to take control of the island of Hong Kong. And not only that, but they're going to continue the opium trade. The treaty itself went up to 1898. And then in 1898, they signed a 99-year agreement with the Chinese government at the time that said in 99 years, the island of Hong Kong will revert back to the Chinese government. So in 1997, you see Hong Kong returning to China. That was in July 1997. And you can see in the picture here, this was the official handover of Hong Kong to China. There is a lot of stuff that happens at this point because Hong Kong had been under control of the British. So it was under British laws, the rights and freedoms that the British had. And then it was supposed to have a 50-year autonomous time period after 1997 where they kind of self-rule. But China has not been very big on that and has slowly been taking away the rights and freedoms of the people that live in Hong Kong who had been used to living under the ideals of the British. So there's that going on. But anyway, let's go back a little bit. So we go back to 1899, all right? Because of the Opium Wars, you had Great Britain trying to become like the sole trader with China. But other nations were like, no, we want to trade with them too. So everybody's trying to do some exclusive like trade deal with China. But the United States recognized that this was not going to work because all it would do is create more tension and probably create battles and fighting with each other. So in 1899, the United States says, hey, we're going to have what's known as an open door policy to China, meaning that China does not have to have any exclusive trade deals or agreements with any one nation. They can trade with everybody. Now, when that happens, you start to see all these different nations really go in and try and leave their mark, try and have um, business dealings and whatnot. They also try to bring in their cultural pieces, mostly the Western nations like Britain, France, United States. When they go in, one of the things that they do is they start to uh, promote religion like Christianity, which is not going to go over very well with some of these peasants. The other thing that happens is that the foreigners that come in, the different country, they actually get better treatment by the government at this time than the Chinese people themselves get, which is not going to sit well with basically the commoners in China. So what ends up happening is there is a group that comes about and they form this secret society. It is known as the Society of Harmonious Fists, otherwise known as the Boxers. The Boxers believe that they are a group that is possessed by their or has possession of special powers, magical powers, where they can go fight using the spirits of their ancestors. And they go out and they decide that they're going to take over the places where the foreigners are living and whatnot. And this starts off what's known as the Boxer Rebellion in 1900. You see the foreigners hunker down and try and protect themselves. They try and get word out that they are under attack by these people, these boxers. And what ends up happening is that soldiers from the different countries, including the United States, Britain, and even Japan, have to go in and they have to fight against the boxers. Now, the boxers thought that they had magical powers, and they believed that anything would pass through them. Unfortunately, they are right. Bullets will pass through them. Unfortunately, it'll hit different body parts as it goes through them. So the different soldiers from the different countries come in with the more advanced weaponry and they will defeat the boxers. And this is going to push that open door policy as a permanent solution for trade. Now, the Chinese government does not like the fact that the foreign troops come in and basically kill their citizens. So then the Chinese government tries to put a stop to more foreigners coming in. But at this point, this isolationist ideal that the Chinese have is going to become pretty much irrelevant. Why? Because the Chinese can't stop all these people from coming in and wanting to trade. And they start to realize that if they don't trade, that these other countries may go, okay, we're not going to buy anything from China anymore. And that's going to destroy their economy. So unfortunately, China becomes open door because of pressure and force, not because of what they want to do. Because of that, you're going to start to see the remnants of imperialism staying, and it's going to end up leading towards tensions in different parts of the world. We've already seen it in Africa, we see it in India, now we see it in China. Because the Europeans are very big on pushing their religious and economic views on other countries and empires, that is not going to do well. And unfortunately, expanding these territories by the Europeans or claiming territories is going to be a cause for when we get to World War One, because imperialism becomes a huge point when people start running out of land to basically take over in imperialism, and now they want other resources. And the only way to get other resources is by taking other people's land, which means you're going to cause conflict and tension, which means you're going to lead to fighting, and it's all going to blow up. And we're going to end up getting into World War One. But that's a different video at another time. So I hope you've understood what's going on here with China in imperialism. And if you have any questions, comments, feel free to leave them for me. The social tip of the day is remember to respect your elders. Our grandparents, great grandparents, they did a lot to help get where we are today. Um, they should be respected and revered. They have a lot of knowledge. They know the history because they've lived through it. If you ever want to get to know something really important about the history that you don't know or that you didn't experience because you're not as old as they are, I encourage you to sit down and talk with your grandparents, great grandparents, even your parents, because they can tell you about things that happen, and they give a very different perspective sometimes of what was going on at that moment when they were experiencing it compared to what we read in our textbooks sometimes. So there you go. Respect your elders. They have a lot of wisdom and knowledge there that you can look to and get a very good perspective about. Until next time, I will see you later. If you like my videos, make sure you subscribe and you can check out the other videos I have. I will talk to you guys later. I'm Mr. Hudson. This is Hud's History. Peace out.